Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Philip Osteen, Dean of the University of Utah College of Social Work. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Social Work Beyond the Classroom event. This series gives us the opportunity to engage in work that extends beyond the classroom, connects practice, research, and community knowledge. Whether you're joining us live today or watching this recording at a later time, we're glad that you're here and that you could join us. Today, we're pleased to welcome one of our MSW and PhD alums, Dr. Lani Tahalo. Dr. Tahalo is a licensed clinical social worker with more than 40 years of experience. She is the director and co-owner of Child and Family Empowerment Services, which has been in operation for more than 2 decades. With ancestral roots in Tonga and Hawaii, her work is rooted in indigenous epistemology and Pacific Islander ways of knowing. She developed the Kaimana curriculum as a culturally responsive approach to conflict resolution and trauma intervention. During today's session, Dr. Taholo will introduce the theoretical foundations of Kaimana intervention, including the Lokahi will of balance and harmony, and explore indigenous concepts of harmony and pluralism. These frameworks offer meaningful ways to think about balance, relationship, and responsibility in social work practice. Following the presentation, we will have time for audience questions, so please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions at any point during the session. Dr. Taholo, thank you for being with us today and for sharing your work with our community. And at this time, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Mahalo, Dean Osteen. Welcome, everyone. Aloha and talofa malolele. We welcome to our Kaimana Skills Workshop. This is an Indigenous approach to conflict resolution. And my full name is Leilani Ann Ha'akai Ko'okalani Katoa Taholo. The University of Utah recognizes that the Salt Lake Valley has always been a gathering place for Indigenous peoples. The land is named for the Ute tribe and is a crossroads for various Indigenous communities. The acknowledgement states, recognition of tribes. The land is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. In terms of enduring relationships, the University of Utah acknowledges the ongoing relationships between these tribes and their traditional homelands. For gratitude and respect, University of Utah makes a statement that expresses gratitude for the territory and respect for Utah's Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the land. University of Utah has a commitment to Indigenous communities. The university is dedicated to serving Native communities throughout Utah in partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and outreach activities. The University of Utah's land acknowledgement was adopted in 2020. It reflects its commitment to recognizing and addressing the historical and contemporary relationships with Indigenous peoples, ensuring that these relationships are honored and supported through meaningful actions such as today in our workshop and giving a space to have this dialogue, such as scholarships and also active partnerships with local tribes engaging in research and community outreach that supports Indigenous communities. Not sure why there would, okay. Yeah.
Hi.
Hopefully you can hear this chant, Hawaiian chant. Welcome everyone here to the land. and in this space together. Aloha Oli chant.
O naunai ka halame ka lewa e halelehua no ia na kanu. O ka uno ia e ano iane e alane o io tai ki mai. Ai ti mai noi, ai ti puno me te aloha. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e.
This is a pantheon of volcano spirits by great Hawaiian artist Herb Kane. This speaks to the epistemology of our indigenous peoples. On the left, you will see that we have Hawaiian chanting, where we have one of our kane, our males, chanting to the gods of the elements. More towards the right, in the center, you will see the dancers that are giving honor to the gods over the elements, that their people may be safe, that they will have great harvest. Everything is connected in the land, in the spirit of the land, all of the creations put together. Further to the right, you will see the goddess Pele, the goddess of fire, over the fire that comes out of the volcanoes from the center of the earth and coming down over all of the land that's already erupted from beneath the oceans, creating more land every time there is a lava flow. This is actively going on, the big island of Hawaii, where my ancestors are from. And then over to the right, you will see one of the gods again over the elements of thunder and lightning, bringing rain to give nourishment and moisture to our crops and to help clean the land. This is all to represent a connection and a nurturing. This is very much a part of Indigenous epistemology. Welcome, everyone. The other greetings that I did not say were Yorana, Kiora, Akwe, Hadai. We gather with openness of heart and mind together to care for the land and for the community. This is called Aloha Aina in Hawaiian. We will discuss harmony and pluralism within Indigenous epistemology to understand the concepts and share practice concepts. February 12th at 4 p.m. will be our practice time. In a few weeks from now, we'll have more time to practice. Today is just a 1-hour webinar so that we can introduce some concepts and be able to hopefully answer some questions. Again, my name is Leilani Ann Hakai Kalani Katoa Taholo. I am the daughter of Lorna Leigh Martinson Katoa and Latu Inoke Katoa. I am also the granddaughter on my mother's side of Martin Pele Martinson, direct descendant from the mother, Po'iva, the mother of King Kamehameha I, also granddaughter of Su Laiwan Ako. They are both in this picture to the right, where they were working in the sugarcane fields at the sugar mill on Big Island, where there was many immigrants coming to the properties there on Big Island to help raise their families and to help produce and bring more family and relatives, even my great grandmother, as you can see her there. And she was very, very special in her spirit I'm also the granddaughter of Takipo Anaseni Takipo Tamoy Peao Katoa from the island of Tongatapu from Tonga, and also from Semisi Katoa, who was from Baba'u, Tonga. She was one of the head nurses at Viola Hospital, and my grandfather in Tonga was the first dentist in Tonga. And then I want to make sure I acknowledge that my grandma Sulaiwana Ko from mainland China was an FAA secretary in Hawaii. They were there during Pearl Harbor time, and there are many stories in our family of running to shelters. So there's a lot of memories that we hold in our DNA. The concept of Kaimana, I want to be able to share it with you so that you can understand what is Kaimana. It is the combined words of Kai, meaning water or ocean or the wave of the ocean, Mana, meaning, excuse me, divine power from within. So Kaimana would be divine power of the sea, divine power of the wave of the sea. And in the process of Kaimana, this wave is not to drown you, but to empower you with a wave of support, a wave of resources, a wave of care and hope. This is Kaimana. Our vision is to help people receive the Kaimana Intervention wave of a safe space where therapeutic and culturally based skills for emotional healing are practiced, to not lose the me and the we of the collective, nor the power of the we, which is the power of the collective, for therein lie the navigational threads of successful emotional healing. If I can move this. Our mission is that the Kaimana Intervention podcast and group curriculum offer a Kaimana wave of culturally based skills, support, and a safe space for emotional healing with generous and humble Kaimana Intervention trained therapists and trained cultural consultants to help others see, hear, and understand themselves, their loved ones, and even their offenders above, below, and around all the noise of the world. This is the essence of navigating through emotional healing successfully while keeping your true self intact. Purpose of the Kaimana curriculum. There are several models here in the Kaimana curriculum, but we don't have time to go over all of them. But we will when we get together again and gather again on February 12th. That is the cultural value priority self-confrontation, which is a safe way to actually confront some of the false thoughts and feelings that we have about ourselves and how we interact with others. The Kaimana cultural over appeasement and avoidant isolation spiral continuum, or in other words, the spiral continuum. And that talks about what we tend to do as Indigenous populations when we feel shame and when we feel invalidated. We also have the cultural intelligent intuition. All of these are specific only to the Kaimana Intervention curriculum and are intended to work towards a restoration of the best of ourselves, in spite of the trauma or conflict we have experienced. This process may be necessary to unearth some pain in order to help heal it. The message of Kaimana is that there is a sacred part of each of us that is unviolatable if we are open to the concept that we are inherently valuable. We realize that we are worth confronting the falsehoods about ourselves. This is the ultimate goal of Kaimana Intervention, to naturally self-perpetuate complete honesty and accountability within ourselves, to help ourselves, our loved ones, and others for healing. Culture is the symbol of speaking our truth through healthy self-confrontation and courageous conversations. Why is culture and having courageous conversations critical to understanding our healing process? We will go through that in the presentation. This is one of my most favorite art creations, Pele's Voyage to Hawaii by Herb Kane. I would like to share a statement on Indigenous well-being. It is widely recognized that Indigenous peoples are often not well served by Western treatment styles, and those seeking help are often confronted with more alienation and traumatization. Due to frequent absence of culturally competent care, lack of access to Indigenous healing options and care, culturally influenced Indigenous behavior is often misinterpreted as evidence of psychopathology. It is now recognized that when culturally appropriate care is provided, patients respond better by National Aboriginal Health Organization 2008. They are largely diagnosed through non-Indigenous theories. Here is the Lokahi wheel. Lokahi meaning harmony, in balance. At the top, we have spiritual and soul. We are looking at a 360 degree of wellness for the Pacific Islander Indigenous populations. It is a 360 view of all of our connections. And this is actually how our worldviews are made up. At the top, we have spiritual and soul because we believe that this is where the Creator and all the gods over the elements have blessed and want to continue to bless our souls and our spirits and our bodies. And so the water represents healing. The moon represents, it's named after the Hina, the goddess of spiritual guidance. So the moon represents spiritual guidance and the water represents healing. If you are feeling out of balance, I will share with my people that I work with at the clinic that we work at. If you are feeling out of sorts or out of harmony in your spiritual parts in your soul, what parts are you feeling are out of balance within your sense of connecting with your spiritual side, with all those parts in your life that have spiritual meaning? Which parts feel out of balance or out of harmony? And we will discuss those. We also look, and this is very much clinical as well as part of our Indigenous healing. We are looking to see if these disharmonies, the lack of harmony, the lack of balance, is actually impacting their major roles in their life on a daily basis or nearly daily basis. If it is, we mark this area of the Lokahi wheel as being significant to go back to so that we can do a deeper dive into those areas and begin to listen to the needs and the narratives of what's going on, and then formulate a plan together of how they actually want to bring harmony and balance into this part of their being, of their well-being. Next, you will see in the next part of the Lokahi wheel pie, our friends and family. This is depicted by people who are on a boat going from point A to point B. They obviously are having some communication. The issue is, what if one or two of them had dropped their oars? In terms of Lokahi, it's not about being same or let's be equal with each other. So all of us are going to drop our oars too, since you lost your oars. What they do is they bring Lokahi and balance. So they will shift their weight to compensate for those that have lost their oars, and they will communicate this, and they will then use their oars to balance out the canoe. So friends and family and relationships, I will ask again, are there any parts of your relationships with friends, families, people that are significant in your life that are really out of balance, out of harmony, and it's impacting you in a significant way, impacting your daily life, impacting your significant roles in life. Let's do a deep dive into that if this is a significant area. We are again working for balance and harmony, not about being equal, especially in relationships. Then next we have work and school. What's so powerful about this is they are in the Galo or the tarot fields, and they are harvesting this together as a team. We believe in our epistemology, in our ways of knowing here, and in our ontology, ways of being, that this requires that we do not work in silos. We understand taking a break, coming back, but it's all about teamwork in order to be in harmony and balance at work and at school. So we will talk about what are your relationships like at work and school? Where does it feel like it may be out of sorts, out of harmony, out of balance? What specific parts are really impacting your daily living and affecting you in ways that bring negative energy? We want to bring back the positive energy again. Next is thinking in mind. In the thinking in mind, this is an opportunity to have the mind rest and to perceive the mind and the thinking as being a time to pause, to think through what are the impact of our desires are, the impact of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are, to really take a deeper look at that. And we will talk about where is harmony taking place or not taking place, balance taking place or not taking place in your thinking? What have you seen as the outcomes of some of the decisions that you have made, the desires that you've had? Are you working at cross purposes, or are you speaking about the same thing as you go forth into your relationships in these different areas? Next is feelings and emotions with the volcano. There you will see that there's volcanic rock. When the gases build up underneath the volcanic rock, which is porous, if the steam goes up and out through the porous volcanic rocks, the volcano will not erupt. It will only erupt if the gases build up and it's held in and held in and held in, and the steam is not releasing in a timely fashion through the rocks. It is just like our emotions. If we are holding things in, suppressing them, repressing them, then that will be something where at some point we're going to give out or have an emotional overreaction to where we may feel sorrow over those things rather than having it be something that we wanted to have be released in a helpful and harmonious and balanced way. Then next, the last is physical and body. Physical and body is we have connection with other people in relationships, and we are helping one another. To the right, you'll see the rainbow. The rainbow represents if we take care of our bodies will take care of us. If we take care of the earth, the elements, all of our external parts, it will take care of us. The belief is that our bodies are our best friends and do not lie to us. Sometimes our minds do, but our bodies do not. This is well-being in Pacific Islander Indigenous epistemology, a 360 view. There's a deep feeling of knowingness. All of creation is sacred. There is no concern with value of one over the other. There's no worry of who is superior and who is inferior. Sorry about the T, it was meant to be an F, inferior. This requires an epistemological shift in thinking and worldview. For example, Indigenous knowledge includes the understanding of illness and disharmony as illness equals disharmony. Therefore, disharmony can bring illness. Wellness, on the other hand, equals harmony, that there's harmony in our lives. Therefore, harmony brings wellness. That's our understanding of illness and wellness. In the translation from English, a misbehavior does not equate with a criminal to be punished, but is a person who is in need of teaching and healing, and the family and community are responsible for that, preferring to say people who have caused pain versus offender, and people who have been hurt versus victim, meaning that we are more than what we have done or what has been done to us. These languages are the accumulated knowledge of our ancestors. This was stated by Ermine in 1995. While we use Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, to explain and measure mental health, the mental health challenges, Indigenous languages and knowledge honor and support the expression of vibrant relationships between people, their ecosystems, and the other living beings and spirits that share the lands. The work of Indigenous epistemology is to not pathologize, but rather to ask, what has happened here versus what's wrong with you? To ask what parts of your life are out of balance or are out of harmony. When we are not connected, there is a disturbance in the energy force. We hear that from Star Wars, but it's very real in our epistemology. There's a disturbance in the energy force when we're not connected. Author Brian Tuesday said, the only way that we are going to become well in our communities is if we understand how we relate to creation, ourselves, and to others. Dr. Linklater discussed how Indigenous healing focuses on restoring balance to ourselves through relationship with others and the environment. She also indicates that there is a growing opposition to the pathologizing of Indigenous peoples through psychiatry, and that this movement is beginning to emerge. Burstow stated, trauma is not a disorder, but a reaction to a kind of wound. In Dr. Linklater's work, where I teach Indigenous epistemology, they call it soul wound. And Burstow states, it is a reaction to profoundly injurious events. Colonization has caused multiple injuries, multi-traumatic contexts for Indigenous peoples. If you think about multi-generational trauma points, here are some multiple types of trauma. These come in layers. For example, think about this in racism, and think about slavery. Whenever there was a slave that was taken in, the belief in our epistemology would be that that slave would not only suffer in body and spirit and in mind in their own being, which is the current, but that all of their ancestors, it would have a dynamic ripple effect into their ancestral DNA and lines and their lineages. And it's really interesting looking at epigenetics right now and how trauma can truly impact us on a cellular level. Also, historically, there's historical trauma. And so there is an acknowledgement that we are beginning to have these feelings and being traumatized again. So historical trauma, ancestral trauma, and then all of these collective experiences have a ripple effect. What's interesting is that when the amygdala is on in the emotional part of the brain, that amygdala, which is the alarm system of our body, stays on. So if you can imagine experiencing the life of being a slave, your amygdala, your alarm would always be on, and the hippocampus, which actually helps to manage the feelings and the memories of that, can actually over time begin to shrink as it has been in epigenetics. It has actually been impacted and affected with trauma. It is not at a normal size. It, however, through brain plasticity, can come back through healing. And in Indigenous epistemology, we believe that as we work through Indigenous ways and healings, that the hippocampus, the well-being of the brain, the alarm, calming the alarm, the amygdala down in the emotional brain actually takes place. So there is a biological healing that takes place as well. The depth of being in Indigenous epistemology, which is ontology, the central cultural values in Indigenous epistemology of humility, gratitude, respect, responsibility, kindness, and generosity match the spirit and the values of the NASW Code of Ethics. In metaphysical choice and epistemology, these values are not intellectual or cognitive choices that emanate from knowing. They are expressions of the undifferentiated force that animates and connects all things, because nature already exists this way. So you don't have to shift into a cognitive choice or an intellectual choice. Nature already exists this way. You don't have to recreate the wheel. It's a way of not only knowing, it's a way of being. Harmony comes from being with difference and creating balance, and it needs everyone's uniqueness versus being the same. This is very much social work. It is less about thinking and more about connection. This involves intentional connection and interdependence towards long-term resilience. You can see how when you have these layers of foundational epistemology, ways of knowing and being, that when conflicts come, you've already have foundational understandings and ways of being that can see conflict only as a minor piece of the greater picture. And we'll go over that in more detail. Understand and use multiple epistemologies to relate. This is pluralism. In understanding pluralism, Kahete in 2004 suggested that through Indigenous epistemology, a person's understanding of the cycles of nature, behavior, animals, growth of plants, and interdependence of all things in nature determine their culture. That is the ethics, morals, religious expressions, politics, and economics. The people came to know and to express a natural democracy in which humans are related and interdependent with plants, animals, stones, water, clouds, and everything else. My grandmother, who was a healer, the nurse in Tonga, but also she was a herbalist and knew the different plants. It was interesting because whenever there was a conflict, my grandmother would look around and she would reconnect with her surroundings, remembering that there was a natural democracy that it was already taking place in the environment where all things were interdependent and connected. So putting more perspective on the conflict that was taking place at that time. It was very powerful because we always knew that we would come to some sort of a resolution because grandmother already had all of these pieces within her, and she would share these practices with us. Through solidarity with the rational mind and amplification of the metaphoric mind, where you're looking at all of the interdependent and connection pieces, epistemological dominance. So if we're only thinking in one Western culture way in terms of epistemology, that will be disrupted and held in tension within an epistemological pluralistic way of relating with the world, that they can coexist. Ahena Q talked about this in 2014, and I've been doing a lot of reading in his world. It's been amazing. Pluralistic understanding of power within Indigenous epistemology. In Indigenous epistemology, power means connection for resiliency versus taking control over someone or something. When we are working on a conflict, we are not looking to take control over someone or something. We are looking towards connection to begin to work towards resiliency. And this is, again, versus the misuse of powers external to ourselves. We'll talk more about that later. Like the multiple traumas, as discussed earlier, when I talked about some of the slave narratives and what would happen there. So it's not about taking control, it's about connection. Pluralism allows the healer and the therapist to view power in a different way and to invite those in conflict to reframe power as connection, as we are all interconnected, and to work towards resiliency. And this is my argument, is that the power to connect is the willingness to relate on something. We'll go over the steps of how we would work in a conflict. So the power to connect is the willingness to relate on something. Operative word, willingness. The move to resiliency is the action of the relatability to adapt over time through practice to become equal to the healing. It's all very process oriented. But we start with an open mind, open heart. We talk about this in Kaimana all the time. It's this willingness to relate to something. That is the beginning of connection, a willingness to relate. The definition in Kaimana Intervention for conflict. Conflict is the absence of relatability through balance to help form a connection. That's what conflict is in our Indigenous epistemology. The practice of conflict resolution brings resiliency. In Indigenous epistemology, the loss of balance, losing or being deprived of centering and balancing practices can lead to a loss of heart. That's what's happening in conflict. A potentially self-destructive existential disconnect that mobilizes experiences of insecurity, scarcity, weakness, and inadequacy. These can lead to contempt for others, self-importance, and self-hate, which in turn breed fear, corruption, and aggression. Again, by Ahena Q. Before moving into the steps, again, deep knowingness includes illness is disharmony, wellness is harmony, and harmony brings wellness. Let's remember that we are more than what we have done or what has been done to us, and that this is an accumulated knowledge of our ancestors. Here are the steps. First, acknowledge that there is more than one way of thinking in the world when you come upon a conflict. There's more than one perspective to inform us about the world. Next, in Indigenous epistemology, power means connection for resiliency versus taking control over someone or something. This helps the folks that are in the middle of the conflict to actually understand that we're not trying to take control over anyone or anything. We're trying to work towards a connection. That pluralism next allows me, the healer or the therapist or you, to view power in a different way. And I am inviting those in the conflict to reframe power as connection for resiliency. And I will go further into those steps. The power to connect is the willingness to relate on something. And then we will go through the steps of moving to resiliency, the action of the relatability to adapt over time through practice. And this is a word to the healer. Allow yourself to think intuitively and to feel with heart. as you help them work towards a restoration of balance and harmony from the conflict. Next, invite them, and these are some words that we talked about at the beginning. Mana is your own internal divine power. Bring your mana, bring your divine power, bring your own energy of positiveness in for Lokahi to work towards harmony, because the battle is not between us. It is outside of us. This is due to the loss of balance. Then ask, knowing all these pieces that I've shared with you, are you willing to share one thing that you and this other person can relate to? Because obviously you're in the same space. You are learning some things together. If you are in the same space for possibly work or school. And what you would do is allow them to take turns sharing one or more things that they can relate on, and talk about and share how we are more than what we have done or what has been done to us. Again, the battle is not between us, it is outside of us due to a loss of balance. I do recommend taking a break here and thank them for taking time to practice relating on one thing or more. I invite them and ask them how are their energy levels. We can rejoin later. We can come back later. We can remember the things that we related on. If they're ready to move forward, I then work on identifying the significant imbalances using the Lokahi wheel with whoever is ready to do that first. If they are not ready to do that with the other person, then we would do that in separate. We would actually go into a separate space where the one person can go over their significant imbalances using the Lokahi wheel, and then to work to help create a plan for them to address. And then we will go to the other person. I do ask them individually if there are some things in their imbalances that they would like to recognize when we rejoin with the other person after they've gone through their significant imbalances. They may be willing, and I've seen this before, to share one imbalance that led up to the disharmony, that led up to the disconnect. It's really important to identify and plan to use certain supports. What supports do you need in order for you to feel and have more harmony in these areas that have been out of balance or out of harmony? Who are some significant people in your lives? What are certain things that you do? I've worked with folks who have said, there are certain people in my life that I would like to acknowledge and to bring into my life, specifically in these areas. In terms of what I love to do in terms of healing and thriving, I love to dance, or I love to do music. Typically, a lot of it can be in the arts, but it's always something that helps them. Typically, the patterns are to grow and to learn and to feel good about themselves. And so this is basically some of the steps that we take in the Kaimana intervention to be able to help mitigate some of the conflict utilizing our indigenous epistemology. I'm trying to finish on time so that I can make sure to open up for questions. There's a lot to cover, so it's 12:46. I think we were going to stop at about 12:50 to answer any questions. Let me just share with you some other pieces on Kaimana. This is the Kaimana cultural over-appeasement and avoidant isolation spiral continuum, when we feel shame and invalidation. So when we meet in February 12th, I'll introduce this. So on one extreme, shame and invalidation can move us into a tendency to over-appease others, where it can lead to blind loyalty, extreme codependence, deep loneliness, and that spirals down to conflict, trauma, violence, abuse, suicide, grief, which is then passed on to future generations, which is intergenerational trauma. On the other side of the shame and invalidation, the other extreme is avoidant isolation, which can lead to blind overcompensation and isolation, extreme independence to the point where we might both live under the same roof, but we're like two ships that pass in the night. There's no connection. And then a deep loneliness spiraling down. What we go over is how to spiral up and out of the vicious cycle, beginning with open mind, open heart, and open mind, and then all of the steps going through that. We typically do homework with all of our folks and come back to have courageous conversations. And then we talk about speaking our truths to always be which always includes being honest with ourselves. This is authentic in the Kaimana Intervention because we believe the beginning of genuine peace is accountability with understanding and not with attacking others. And that accountability leads to transformation and also resiliency. That is everything that I have. So I will stop the share. And I am here. Okay. Oh, thank you for your comments. I'm glad you feel it's helpful, and I'm hoping all of you that felt like you could connect with this will come back February 12th. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad it was grounding and heartfelt. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next piece too. Thank you. Love the balance. Good. Yes, more Indigenous framework being represented. Yes. Love the art. Thank you. Oh, so glad you liked learning. Educational. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I will get with the powers that be so I can share this slide. I love this. Good. I'm so glad. I'm not mahalo, Ramona. There were some other comments where they wanted to ask questions, but oh, there's a Q&A right there. Have you made adaptations targeted specifically to children? Oh, that's such a great question, Angela. I actually teach in the impact of child abuse, and we just did our trauma session or piece yesterday in our curriculum here at the University of Utah. It was, I have some pieces that I would love to share in terms of working with children, because there are ways of knowing and being with children and their work. And my background is in child play therapy, Jungian child play therapy. So it is about child play. That's critical. So you could use some of these epistemological pieces, but it would need to be integrated with child play, which is their language in their world. Thank you. Oh, some more Q&A. Okay, could you share one or two examples of the types of supports you might recommend for someone who feels imbalance in each of the areas of the Lokahi wheel? Sure. And then Brandon, can you share any experience of using this approach with non-Indigenous clients? Heck yes, Brandon. We actually had some situations where my students, as part of the Indigenous epistemological class, I needed them to do it, also practice with non-Indigenous and see what the response was. So I have some stuff to share there. Okay, one or two examples of types of support you might recommend. I definitely recommend that they, if there are any people that they perceive as elders or who carry wisdom and knowledge within any of those areas and also within their own cultures. And everyone has a culture. That is our belief. So I say to many of my friends who came from European descent, we go back to their crest, like from Ireland or Scotland or England, or we go back to those pieces. We do a lot of rugby, Pacific Islander rugby in many of these European countries. And we talk about how many of our indigenous parts match. It's just that through coming through and then assimilation versus acculturation, we've lost some of those traditions. And so it's really huge. I also would say supports in terms of connecting with anyone they feel like is a mentor to them. Mentors are huge. I really recommend all my students are find a mentor that is balanced, brings harmony, that can help them through those hard pieces of feeling imbalanced. Also, I would tie in any of their talents and their gifts into bringing in their harmony and balance into those areas. So if they're really great at art or music or dance or uh, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, I would definitely target those areas with their gifts and with their talents. Bring those protective factors in together with those people or many of those people that would be a mentor to them. I'm hoping that helps. Can you share any experience using? Okay, yeah, the indigenous, non-indigenous clients talked about in the feedback that the Lokahi will actually felt so safe for them in both situations. No, in one situation, it was someone coming out with LGBTQIA plus identity after not being there and after being married and having married many children, that bringing balance into their lives through the Lokahi wheel, and then specifically processing that and setting up plans for how to make their approach was really freeing for them. They said in terms of feeling like they could really use their voices. That was really significant. And another indigenous person said they had lost contact with their elders in his indigenous family. And so he said that using the Lokahi wheel and then wanted to know more about our other practices and models within Kaimana because it worked. Some of the dialogue actually worked and they were starting to meet together and have dinner together and do those things together. Okay. Let's see. Are there other? Okay. Other questions? Here we go. How can I integrate the Kaimana intervention for clients who are living in difficult situations that are out of their control? That's exactly what this is for, is our folks that are living in difficult situations and their external environment is not allowing them to feel in harmony and to feel like they can practice these things. So we will actually work with them if they're willing to work on Kaimana intervention, go through the spiral continuum as well as the Lokahi wheel, and to use their cultural intelligent intuition. One of the things that's keeping them there, according to Kaimana, would be that they haven't been able to do cultural value priority self-confrontation yet. And doing that healthy self-confrontation means that they will begin to set boundaries around those difficult situations. And then we begin to process those narratives and to set up plans for those. So I'm hoping that makes sense for you. Do you have a list of providers who offer this type of treatment approach? It's us at Child and Family Empowerment Services. And you can always reach us here at school. Also, my email is ltaholo, LTAHOLO @gmail.com. And then within Child and Family Empowerment Services, we have a list of those who have been trained as Kaimana consultants, and then those who are therapists. So I'm hoping that this helps. Let's see. Gisela, could you give us brief examples of confronting self-falsehoods? Yeah, that's the CVPSC. That's the cultural value priority self-confrontation. Um, that is where we actually have them do a set of like 7 to 8 questions. It's a self-assessment that they go through. And what they're doing is they're beginning to look at their own values and compare that to the values that they were brought up with. And then what they begin to do is decide which parts they want to keep versus which parts they want to be able to let go, or they don't want to continue those cycles of abuse, for example. And so what they do is in that process is they begin to indicate what their gifts and what their strengths are. And by utilizing those, again, we begin to look at some of the falsehoods. We begin to confront, oh, I always thought that if I remain loyal and appease my family, even at the expense of my own truth, and now I'm beginning to understand how that's actually hurting myself and all of my ancestors and all of generations to come. So that's a brief example of confronting our falsehoods. What is the most culturally competent, appropriate way for us to introduce this intervention to a client? What is important for us to acknowledge and share with a client at the start? Since we are not experts on Indigenous epistemology or may not share this specific cultural background, I just want to make sure I introduce this and practice this intervention ethically. That would be to come and get some training, because we will be holding some trainings. We're happy to do some trainings. And again, you can get a hold of me through school here at the University of Utah, Lonnie.taholo@utah.edu, or at ltaholo, LTAHOLO, @gmail.com. So talk to us if you're interested in some of our trainings. I hope that's helpful. I'm trying to get through these questions. Are we okay on all our questions? Okay. I think I hit them on all the questions that I had so far. But forgive me if I haven't. Thank you for being thoughtful and attending. Thank you. Thank you for bringing your mana.
I hate to bring it to a close. I mean, it's a really great conversation that's going on, and I think it just really speaks to the importance and to the value of the work. I want to thank you for your, deep commitment to helping people stay connected to one another. I'm really grateful for the care and perspective and sensitivity you brought today.
Thank you.
Of course. And to everyone who could join us, thank you for sharing your questions and your time. For those who are seeking continuing education credit, this session has been approved by NASW for 1.5 CEUs, and you will receive an email at the beginning of next week with a link to the recording and a brief quiz. Once the quiz is completed, your CEU documentation will be emailed to you automatically. So as Dr. Tahola mentioned, the MSW program will be hosting her for a special skills workshop on Thursday, August 12th. Is that accurate? I thought you were saying February 12th, but I have
February 12th. It's February 12th.
February 12th, so you don't have to wait 6 months. That's good.
Nope.
While most of these seats have been reserved for current students, there are also a handful of seats available for alumni and community members. And if you're interested in participating, keep an eye out on our events webpage for more information about that and other upcoming events. And I also want to thank our events team and Janae Larson, especially for organizing the event today. And with that, I want to thank you again for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again, and I hope that you all take care of yourselves and those around you. Thank you
Aloha.
so much, Dr. Lowe.
Mahalo. Thank you.
Have a great day.